And I think now we should move on with Q&A. Tuddles, you have anything lined up for this episode? Tuddles, I think your webcam is like frozen or something.
Is it working now?
Yeah,
there you go.
good.
Oh, okay, perfect. I thought you guys haven't been
quiet, actually. Yeah, how long has that been not working?
I mean, have you guys not been paying attention? Like, I've been talking the entire time.
What was the last thing you said, Squishy?
I think we were talking about... Man, I don't remember. It's been so long. No, okay. I lost it.
Okay, so I have something to ask you guys about then. What's actually going on with the tier set changes? Because these are weird. Because you guys kept ignoring me. Blizzard went ahead and hit us with spec-wide 2-set bonuses. Like, what is going on with these?
But didn't we already go over this?
Yeah, but I mean, you guys have been ignoring me the entire time. I gotta weigh in.
Okay, then weigh in. Let's hear it.
I don't know. I thought that it was weird. I mean, personally, I thought that it was a bit strange that Blizzard went ahead and went with like role-wide tier sets. It feels like it takes away a lot of the fun of the tier sets. I understand that they're trying to make it go ahead with the Galagio or whatever theme with all the goblins and whatnot, but at the same point, I felt like it kind of limits their creativity, because I think that some of the most interesting stuff that happens to specs happens between tier set bonuses, and this seemed a little bit weird to me. I wasn't like a huge fan.
How in depth have you looked at some of the different bonuses? Because like at first I kind of had that viewpoint, but then I was kind of looking and I'm like, maybe some of these do actually change the way that you play. Is it like, I feel like at least with the 4 sets that are a little bit different, I feel like there's enough difference, but maybe I might not understand the specs enough to know.
Yeah, so the Moonkin one's completely passive. The Augmentation Evoker one you don't really play around either. I noticed that a decent amount of them seemed like they were pretty passive, just all things considered, with what you were getting. And then the 4 set also ended up being passive because of that. Because the 2 set was like an ability that... How do I even describe it? Particularly, this is an issue with the Jackpot one. And I think it might just be like a ranged DPS thing, where the way that the Jackpot works, you get, a flurry of 12 Demon Fire bolts at 200% effectiveness. Casting Infernal always allows you to hit the Jackpot. And then they felt like they needed to actually have that work into the 4 set. And so then it was like hitting your Jackpot also increases your mastery by 3%, and your spells getting maximum benefit from your mastery for 10 seconds. And I mean, like, that happens for Destro, that happens for Aug Evoker, that happens for Balance Druid, where it's all like completely passive stuff. And maybe it's just a ranged DPS thing.
I mean, for me, I don't think that 2 set's any different than other current 2 sets. I think it's more exciting than the current 2 sets.
I agree that it's no different than current 2 sets, but I think that Blizzard shouldn't be going in this direction, right? I think that they said for War Within Season 1 that it was going to be the Season 1 of an expansion, and that for like Season 1 of an expansion, this was going to be like a little bit of a light tier set, yeah?
Okay, like, I've been thinking about it for a little longer. I'm pretty sure if they didn't use those keywords and just removed everything in that first part, people wouldn't care. If the Balance Druid one was just grow a wild mushroom at a nearby enemy's location, or your damaging spells have a chance to grow a mushroom at a nearby enemy's location, I'm pretty sure no one would care.
I'm pretty sure everybody would notice that they're the exact same, though.
I'm pretty sure no one would notice. I really do not think people would notice.
I mean, the ranged DPS one has the exact same formula, where it's your damaging spells have a chance to trigger an event that procs one of your passive procs for your specialization at X amount of effectiveness, and pressing your cooldown always hits that ability. That's exactly what Aug Evokers is, right? Your damaging spells have a chance to hit a Jackpot, causing an upheaval at 100% effectiveness. Casting Breath of Beyond always does that. It's the same with the Destro Warlock one that I just talked about.
I mean, I don't think it's an issue, though. I mean, I think it's a standard 2 set. That's the way I see it.
I think it's going to require the 4 sets to do a lot of heavy lifting, and I feel like the 4 sets were pretty uninspired.
I sort of see what Squishy's saying. I think I had that initial reaction of like seeing the same words in every single one and then being like, what are they doing? But like not actually thinking through everything. I do agree it's a little samey, but another thing to point out too is one of the big purposes of tier sets is to change how your class plays from like tier to tier, especially to address like certain gameplay problems. or to bring up spells that aren't being used. But they're actually being so aggressive with their talent tree tuning. Like, so many classes are getting regular talent tree reworks and changes from season to season that I kind of feel like that purpose of the tier set, now that they're sort of having this new approach to talent trees, is a little bit unnecessary, you know? Like, they don't really need a tier set to change the rotation if the talent tree changes are already changing the way you play, you know what I mean?
How did you feel about like Dragonflight Season 3 Mistweaver Monk tier?
I couldn't even tell you what that is.
Oh, Target Growl. All right.
That was the increased healing to the target one, right? I think.
Yeah. That they turned into a talent.
Yeah, I thought that was a good one. I thought that was a good it basically just like Mistweaver's healing was like very splashy kind of everywhere, and you struggled a little bit like prio healing without it, and it kind of like filled a good niche. And I think it fits well into a talent, so I liked it.
Yeah, and I feel like whenever they do stuff like that, that's cool, and then it allows them to kind of create these unique effects that they later on turn into talents, and I do worry that they're going to kind of shoehorn themselves into not having that creative.
Yeah, I guess the way I see it is they're sort of like skipping over the part of it being a tier set, right? Like they're basically just going right into the Mistweaver talent tree and adding those things in. Not saying they're like, I don't know for sure if they're doing a good job of that or if they will, but I think that's their goal at least, is that like, you know, if there is this problem with the current Mistweaver kit, let's address that in the talent tree ASAP and not rely on the, you know, tier set to switch stuff up.
I mean, looking at some of the current two sets, like the Druid Balance one, Star Surge damage increased, Starfall damage increased. That's about what we're getting.
Well, I mean, does anybody have that blue post that they said whenever? I think they may have said it in an interview where they were talking about tier sets for this patch, and they said that they were going to go light on the tier sets since everybody was going to get hero talents, and they were going to go a little bit harder on it as the expansion went on.
I mean, I think that overall these are more complicated than season ones. But I don't think a two set really matters to me. A two set could be really weak, it could be really strong. It's not the end goal.
Well, I don't feel like the four sets are actually anything to write home about, though.
Probably to me they're better than what we got this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're like not
like
great,
sure the bar's really low. Yeah, the bar's pretty low from season one, but there's a season 3 coming out. I'm sure they're gonna go all out on that set.
I mean, I don't know. Your damaging spells and have a chance to hit a jackpot, launching a shattering star at 3 nearby enemies. Like, really? Like, is that really? Is that really? Cool. And then, I mean, you think that shattering star is like that's?
What if it makes like a cool slot machine sound and like does an animation?
Oh, it does a slot
There's
machine.
There's like a bunch of lucky sevens pop up.
I mean, that's like a 20% damage boost, and Dev is known for 3 target cleave right now. It works out really well.
I guess it's fair. Casting Shattering Star increases the damage of your next empower spell by 20%. I don't know.
Maybe. So yeah, I mean, like the bar's low for season 1. I'm kind of okay with it though. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm not in love with it. I feel like with tier set bonuses, they should actually try to push the envelope for what specs are doing. But yeah, I think I understand where you guys are coming from. The other thing that I saw that was actually crazy is the season 2 changes to dungeons and affixes. So I think these changes to affixes are mostly pretty good here. What exactly does this do? Because I feel like I don't understand what's actually going on with the Keystone Legends season 2 thing where you get a rating of 2850.
Yeah. So last week, Growl, to catch you up, Growl and I talked about why this achievement even exists in the first place. Because
what does it do?
It prevents your key from going below 12. Which
after you
doesn't matter when 12 isn't a breakpoint anymore. If you didn't see, they are basically making it so that the Xal'ata's Guile buffs every dungeon level by 12% instead of 10% per level. So there's no like massive spike at 12, and therefore there's no spike at 12.
They changed the base scaling of the dungeon. Dude, whenever I read this, I thought they were changing it to 10% health, 10% damage. Or no. To 12% health, 12% damage.
There is no bonus damage or health. It's just the scalar goes up.
Oh.
So this achievement is completely worthless because 12 is not a breakpoint, and therefore we don't know why it exists. Does someone summarize that well, Grell?
Yeah. I think the conclusion that I kind of came to that you suggested was there's been so many suggestions or people talking about depleting in the Keystone system, and I think a lot of people saw this and they're like, our gut reaction was like, okay, what are they doing? Like they're doing something with the deplete system. I think this is not it. I think this is just like a little for fun flavor thing, and I think their main purpose here is just to add another achievement beyond 10s to get people to kind of get their foot in the door and feel like they've like accomplished something when they get 12s. I don't think this is really a change that was meant to address key depletion or any sort of the Keystone system.
Do you know what the worst part about this is?
Maybe right.
I realized this like last week after we recorded, but the way that this is worded gave a lot of people false hope. Because it says failing to clear a Mythic Plus dungeon within the timer will no longer reduce the level of your keystones below 12. And that could absolutely mean that are below 12, meaning your keys below 12 don't deplete.
Dude, I thought that's what that meant whenever I first read it. Like I feel like
no.
I feel like I didn't really understand like what this was even saying.
No, it's horribly worded. But I'm like 90% sure it means that keystones that are level 12 cannot deplete below 12, which they're missing a few words there to clarify that. But I know I realized a couple people were baited into thinking that depletes are being removed once you get this achievement.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure what it means is the only change is if you have a key and it's a plus 12 and you deplete it, it's still a plus 12.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that makes sense whenever I'm reading this back, but also at the same point, I don't think that
would have made a whole lot more sense this season with 12s being such a breakpoint or whatever.
I also don't think this solves what the issues that people were having with the system were.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it was meant to. Like, I think it just happened to be a coincidence that they did this little thing, or maybe it could be too them getting their foot in the door and kind of just like seeing, just like messing around and seeing what kind of impact a very small change like this could have. But I definitely don't think this is like meant to be a change that fixes things. I think this, like, think about portals, right? Like, I think this is supposed to be like a little fun convenience thing that is like a small achievement that you can earn.
Yeah.
I don't think it's meant at all to be like addressing problems in the system.
I think that, I think that for players who actually have aspirational goals to actually push keys, this is probably a good thing. Like, say you're one of those people, and I've heard like I've seen like a decent amount of commentary from people like this where they like to casually push keys, like in Dragonflight they were doing 23s, 24s, 25s, not like pushing the absolute upper limit of the system, but casually pugging keys. I feel like something like this is actually pretty good for that kind of player who has aspirational goals to push, but maybe not push all the way up for title. It probably helps them with that.
It certainly doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt, but it's weird that it's only level 12.
Think,
that's my only thing.
What would you do instead then? I'm sorry.
I don't know. It feels weirdly targeted for something, targeting a problem that no longer exists.
Well, there is still a little bit of a difficulty increase at the 12 level because you're losing the Guiles. The Guiles actually do make the dungeon, or not the Guiles, but the bargain affixes. The bargain affixes do make the dungeons easier.
Slightly, but you're no longer getting a random 20% health and 10% damage?
It was 10-10, but yeah.
Oh, 10-10? Okay, I don't know what it ended up at, but sure. Like, you're no longer getting that, so it's going to be like a full key level lower. So.
I mean, this season was crazy. I think that most people tend to agree that I remember when that jump started, I was like, all right, I'm just going to be an 11 key doer for the rest of my life. There's no way I can make it to 12.
I think a lot of people had that feeling
it was just
when they
so
stepped
hard.
into 12s.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up episode 23 of The Bench. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.
All right, welcome to episode 24 of The Bench, powered by Wowhead. We are back this week, and we are going to be talking about some of the most up-to-date news, including a lot of exploits, and I'm not talking about HC Growl. People are not bypassing captchas today on retail as they are exploiting the Winterveil event. Isn't it an exploit? Well, I guess we're going to talk about it. Yay!
There's been so many exploits over the last... I don't know. It seems like they just come and go. Like, there's always dumb, stupid things that people bring into Mythic Plus, but it's been a mega talking point lately.
I am beyond over the exploits in Mythic Plus. And so let's talk about it a little bit. So there was this post on the competitive WoW Reddit, and it's titled Raid Buff Exploiters Running Rampant. This is terrible. Like, basically, Mistletoe and Exploited Ring level and Exploited Follower Dungeon buffs, the full hat trick. Blizzard, please make a post condemning this. And what is this? Basically, if you go down and you look at this Lizard's buffs, let's look at this guy. You'll see that he has basically more raid buffs than he should have. He has Mark of the Wild and Arcane Intellect, and they are not running with a mage, nor are they running with a druid. In addition to that, he's got a Mistletoe buff, which gives him 1,000 versatility, and he's going to have the Garrison buff, which gives him another 4,000 versatility. And yeah, I would describe it as like a key level and a half of value. On top of that, there was this weird shit with the signet ring. Let's see, does anybody in their group actually have the ring exploited? This guy has +1 item level, or +3 item levels on his ring. Did anybody do it all the way up? No. Doesn't look like everybody did it all the way up. So basically there was the thing with the ring where if you faction transfer your character, you could repeatedly, over and over again, get the eye level bump on the ring. So this was really stupid. I don't know.
Is there a cap to that? I've been seeing some screenshots that I don't know are real or not.
I think there is a cap, but
the Chinese ones look very fake. I've never seen they're all, dude, all those are like expansion leak quality of a phone of a screen of a phone of a screen. I've never seen a screenshot of a clear screenshot of the like 1500 Cersei circlet ring when it's actually on a character. So I assume that one is just fake.
I feel like
that's the one you're talking about, right, girl?
I feel like those have to be
15,
fake.
13 item level.
Yeah, I think that one's fake.
Now, the Mark of the Wild and the Arcane Intellect, so figuring out how to get follower buffs back in dungeons, that's not fake. Getting the Mistletoe on all of your players, that's not fake. The Garrison buff, that's not fake.
Yeah, so 3 different things here. The follower dungeon one is an ongoing saga. It's been reported multiple times by people to Blizzard, and they have yet to fix it. And as somebody that is historically against exploits, it seems like Blizzard just doesn't care.
Well, Blizzard fixed the follower dungeon one.
One of them.
Allegedly, it still exists,
and then it's not fixed, I guess. So they fixed.
I've allegedly heard of 2 other ways to get the follower dungeon.
Well, so they fixed how you did it the first time. The first time how you did it was like you would jump off like an area, and while you were like jumping off in a follower dungeon, you would leave group and you would maintain your buffs.
Yeah, I've heard of 2 alleged other ways to get them, but I don't know how true that is. But
yeah, I mean, like, for everybody who's like, you know, this may be a little bit squishy too, who's like very anti-exploit, who's like, you know, how could you ever do this? This is terrible. This is bad for the game. Like, when Blizzard leaves these unchecked for so long, it's such a tough spot for anybody trying to enjoy the game. Because, like, imagine you're a team that's trying to compete for, like, you know, top 5, maybe even top 1 M+, and then you have these other teams that are doing these, like, exploits, and they're like doing a full key level or even more maybe above you, and it's like, you know, right away you can be like, damn, that's nasty, I'm not going to do that. But then 1 week goes by, 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, and like you literally can't even compete with them, and you're like, well, you know, like at some point I feel like you have to say, okay, this is just Blizzard's fault, and you just have to load up on the exploits, and there's no way that, you know, they should be banning these people or like doing anything like at this point. Like, if it's like day 1 or day 2 or whatever, like I get it, but you know, like at what point do you just want to enjoy the game and try and play it and try and compete with people?
There is precedent that the buffs Blizzard will take action on too. Zenkiki was the perfect example of that. Literally the exact same thing, almost to a T, where you do a weird set of things to get extra buffs, and they banned back then, and they haven't now.
So part of these are an exploit. So the raid buffs from the follower dungeons, that's an exploit. The Winterveil stuff is an oversight on Blizzard's end. So there was the 2 buffs that come from the Winterveil event. There's the first one that comes from the Mistletoe that I talked about earlier, that you get 1,000 versatility. Historically, this has only been like 1 or 2 versatility, right? It's been a very small amount, but it scales up for this expansion, and it gives you like 1,000 verse, and you're like, okay, that's not a big deal. In addition to that, there's mobs that spawn in your garrison, and you can slash kiss them, and that gives you 4,500 versatility, and neither of these buffs get wiped at the beginning of a dungeon. And I mean, that's not even an exploit. That's just like that's
The
just
worst part is this
that's a
might
part
be
of the
attended.
Winterveil event. Like, what are we talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, that's the interesting thing too, is that maybe that is intended. You know, like
So I posted a patch notes from January 7th, 2019, that people have found way back when, where it talks about mistletoe. And the developer note says, we like fun holiday buffs adding flavor to the game, and we don't want to prevent them from being used in raids and dungeons.
oh wow.
So this was 5 years ago, and this is the last thing that we have on these types of buffs in raids and dungeons. This also includes stuff like the instant cast broom during Hollow's End, which is obviously like not the biggest deal except during bursting week when it existed, but like verse is a lot more potent. And so this is kind of the tough spot that we're in right now. Of our last message from Blizzard on this was 5 years ago. Do we just take this as gospel, or are people going to get banned for this?
Gosh, I mean, there's no way this is an exploit then.
It's
like,
not-
now looking at this is very cut and dry.
It's not an exploit. It's just an oversight on Blizzard's end, which it's infuriating. Like, I'm done playing the season because of it. Like, it's completely invalidated my keys, and it's just like, all right.
I'm not gonna lie, I did because you know, as most people know, I haven't been playing that many keys. But it's not like gear has gotten that much better. And I was looking at the keys people are doing, and I'm like, holy moly! Like people are doing some
They're
crazy
skyrocketed.
keys, and I like couldn't believe that. Like I could definitely see like you know maybe one key level across the board, but it felt like they were doing like 19s and 18s of keys that like you know a 17 was insanely hard, and I'm just like, holy smokes! But I mean, this is making more sense now.
I mean, 5,500 versatility on your entire group is. I mean, you're basically this plus the ring. You're probably getting a key level and a half in total.
Yeah.
Which it's just like, all right, cool. I'm really thankful that you've invalidated my entire season's worth of pushing.
The way things are going right now with Mythic Plus, it just seems like nothing is considered an exploit anymore. Like even the outlaw rogue shit. Like sure, the runs got invalidated because they were that bad. But as far as I know, no one got banned from that wave. Or maybe one person did. So I don't know, man. I don't like it, but I can't deny the facts that Blizzard does not seem to be taking action against anything Mythic Plus related right now.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the ring faction transfer stuff, and I mean another big reason that I think that a lot of this is happening is because Blizzard's just on holiday, right? Like nobody's in the office really to fix stuff
Really?
like this.
I hate that, but
I mean, it's probably just the truth, right?
I completely agree with that, but also the follower dungeon buffs have been reported for months at this point.
I mean, dude, I'm over it. Just wipe every single buff off your player before the dungeon starts. Force you to rebuff.
Realistically, it is shocking that they haven't done that yet. Ever since the days of like, we still do it pre-meta, pre-incarn. Like, why are your buffs getting wiped at the start of a dungeon? Like, why is this a weird tech thing still? Pre-shroud, like, just wipe everybody's buff at the start of the dungeon. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't
Random
know.
tangent.
I mean,
what's the raid situation like with all this?
The what?
The raid situation. Like, can you do this mistletoe stuff and bring it into raid?
Yeah.
I've heard the garrison one doesn't work. I don't know if that's true or not.
The garrison one doesn't work in raid?
I've heard that one doesn't work in raid, but I have not verified that one myself.
Interesting. I don't know why it wouldn't.
I don't know why I would either, but also we're on deep farm right now, and the 3% stack or the 2.5 stacking buff is way more than more important than the mystical. We're just destroying everything. So like,
it's like
it ain't gonna save you from a web blade, Tettles. Let's say that.
Yeah, true, but it will kill your boss 30 seconds faster if everybody gets it.
It's definitely a really weird situation with Mythic Plus where, you know, with raid, it's like it's not really minded, I think. Like I think a majority of the people don't mind the raid getting easier and random fun buffs getting added. But for Mythic Plus, it definitely creates this like weird dynamic of like, I don't know, maybe is it just an us problem? But I'm interested to hear what the commenters think. Like, is this just like a high-end nerd scoreboard problem, and like everyone else just doesn't really care, and like you get the buffs if you want, and it's fun, and you get a little bit make things easier to do your weeklies? Like, I think
it's a nerd problem.
I think it might be. The more that I think about it, the more I think it might be just a nerd problem, and it's not really that big of a deal.
I mean, other games do seasonal holiday events where they give you random buffs, and
all the time.
It's fun. Like if you're just doing your like weekly 10s for Vault, like you're gonna have a blast with these extra buffs. You go a little faster during the Winterveil, woo! Less time spent in keys. So as long as it's not during prog, I don't think people will care. But the problem is high key pushes are always on prog.
Yeah, if anything, the end of the season is like the biggest prog for the hardest pushers.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens if this happened during raid prog? And Blizzard
I think
out
they
of
would
the
specifically
office?
disable it during raid prog.
Oh yeah, there would be Blizzard would be like sliding down fire poles and shit. They'd be like, "Ooh, warning, warning, raid invalidated," and then they would fix it immediately.
How do you feel about the ring upgrades about faction transferring? We didn't really talk about that one specifically.
You hear about this
That's
one,
another.
Grell?
That's another really dumb dynamic because faction transferring is like literally a paid service, right? And so like you're paying. I really don't think that's their intention, or they're like leaving it on purpose to make money or whatever. But man, does it feel bad?
Yeah. You know, there's that screenshot, right? The 1,500 ring. Imagine how much dollars that would cost.
Yeah, for one item, yeah.
No one's gonna do that on Deep Farm. Like, let's be honest here. That's 100% a tooltip thing.
I wouldn't say no one. There are some crazy people in this World of Warcraft.
I mean, you get 3 eye levels per upgrade. I mean, that would be bananas.
I think people would do it pretty easily.
You have to.
Obviously, not a lot of people would do it, but there's definitely people out there.
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
You have to buy like 300 upgrades, something stupid. I mean,
to me, that's like I don't know. I mean, it's such like a weird spot too. Like, what do you do? Refund them and then ban them? Like, what kind of?
I don't even think it's an exploit. I think it's just Blizzard. Again, it's like, what is an exploit versus what is oversight? I think this is just, again, Blizzard's oversight. Like, I don't like, you look at this Chinese group, and they have 2 people who went Maghar Orc, and they swapped from Alliance to Horde because Maghar was a better racial. And now they have +3 item levels on their rings over the rest of the group. Like, are they supposed to get banned for that?
Oh, I mean, 3, I think. Well, so again, that brings back the question: is it repeatable?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I think, in my opinion, like 3 is well within the normal limit, right? Like, if you faction transfer, just happen to get a bonus 3, like I see nothing wrong with that. But if you're beyond 3, then it's like, okay, you're exploiting the system.
What if you faction transferred, then requested a revert of your faction transfer, and then just fucking shift it again?
And then faction transfer again?
Yeah.
They would love that.
Yeah, I mean, the cynical part of people will be like, they're gonna be okay with it because they're paying Blizzard money.
Mm-hmm.
I will be shocked if Blizzard does something on this, and that's coming from somebody that wants them to do something about it. But I will be shocked if they do something about this. Everything they've done regarding exploits this season has been messy.
I mean, they're not doing anything. Like, just to be very candid, they're not doing shit about any of this.
I would love someone to ask them directly.
I mean, that's why I'm done playing. Like, I'm done playing the season because it's absolute nonsense to just like watch my keys completely get invalidated because people are walking to dungeons with 5,500 more versatility. Like, I don't know. I don't know what you want from me, man.
I would love for somebody to just ask Blizzard directly, like, what is going, like, what are the rules for Mythic Plus? Like, you banned for Zenkiki, you're not banning for this. Like, what's going on here? You know?
I think they really are shifting into the dorky mindset of, if you're messing with the Razor World first, you're banned, and if you're not, then no change, like no anything.
Yeah, I think I have a feeling that, I mean, my thought is the amount of effort it takes to ban, to track who did the exploit, revert, ban the correct people with hitting a lot of false positives is just so much work that they've deemed it not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that we've been saying this for a long time. I mean, people got mad at me whenever I had the take on the. You guys remember the fired up stuff? Where I was like, have they ever proactively banned somebody for an exploit that they found out about, like, before like the mass populace reported it? And I think the answer is still just no. Like, I don't think Blizzard ever proactively bans people for exploits. Like, maybe stuff with the economy.
You mean like before there's like a big public outcry?
Yeah, before there's a big public outcry. Like,
no, they definitely have been on the defense for a long time.
They ban you if you mess. They ban you if you mess with the crafting cartels.
Oh, true.
That's right. Dude, they didn't even ban people who fucking cleared Torghast in like 35 seconds. How do you not have like an automatic trigger that just like is like, well, that's a sus run. What do they do here?
I don't know. I mean, it's been like this for a while. They didn't ban for the jailer stuff, and people were actively trying to exploit the boss on stream multiple times, and just like, I don't know.
Am I just not supposed to be above exploits? Like, am I supposed to just like full send it every single time now?
That's the way it's trending. You know, we talked previously about, like, you had that one cop who stopped one speeder, everybody slowed down for a little, and now everybody's just fucking speeding again, except 2 times faster. Like, There we go.
It sucks because it just feels like you're doing something wrong. It feels really bad. Like you would prefer it to just be equal, like on equal footing, and not have to actually look at. And this isn't even like dungeon tech. This is like I'm taking stuff from outside the dungeon into the dungeon, or I'm taking stuff from outside the raid into the raid, and trying to actively break the game.
I think that's honestly a really interesting discussion to have with a dev at any point, just because to see what their philosophy is on that, because like flask pots, like all that is considered fair game. It seems like holiday stuff might now be fair game. Like, how far are they willing to go? And that I think is an interesting discussion to have with them. Has it changed over time?
Dude,
yeah.
Why does it have to be so much versatility? Like, please, just 30.
So has this buff? So you're saying that is it just this expansion that made these buffs this powerful, or how was there a post in 2019 about it if they didn't do anything back then?
These buffs used to were downscaled to be like 38 versatility or something, right?
Go to changelog. What does it say? Oh, what
is this old one? Can I even look? It doesn't say anything because like it's attached to this buff. Let me see.
Yeah.
I can't even like click on this buff that's attached to it.
Yeah. All right.
I'd have to go back and look.
I mean, it's been around for a while. It might have been updated with the holiday refreshes, because they've been doing holiday refreshes over the past year. That might be why it's got updated this year.
Yeah, because it's normally like old world amounts of versatility and like random buffs, right? It's like you drop a campfire and you get like 2 verse or whatever, right?
Yeah, well, it seems weird, right? Because to me, reading that post in 2019 seems very relevant, though, right? Like they were very clear that like, you know, people doing dungeons and raids will see a bonus from these things, and we think that's kind of cool. Like they're very clear with that wording, in my opinion, and so it seems weird if the buff that you got was like, you know, 4 verse or something, right? Like it feels like if for them to write that, the buff would have had to have been sizable even back then.
Yeah, I mean, but also to note, this was 5 years ago. This was pre-Covenant Blizzard, when they were still in their Azerite armor mentality. So
yeah, 2019 was an interesting time in a while.
Because how rough were exploits back in like, what is this? What expansion was this? BFA?
This is BFA's first season BFA, actually.
How rampant were exploits in BFA Mythic Plus?
There was a turtle exploit in...
Yeah, there was a couple. There was in Freehold, you could like spawn the mini bosses and skip the RP before the key.
Right.
That was that BFA was the big like do stuff before the key started, then put the key in expansion, wasn't it?
There was also the backwards Seth release.
Temple of Seth, yep. Well, I think that also involved opening the gate before the key, and then you could skip all the bosses.
And they didn't ban for those either. They fixed them, but they didn't ban for them.
I mean, I don't think they'll ever ban for any of this stuff is the problem. Like, I think that they just need a more foolproof solution, because clearly they aren't putting in the work that is required to make sure it's not an exploit. Literally just wipe all the buffs off of a player whenever a dungeon gets started or something, and it probably solves, you know, taking Torghast powers in the dungeon solves like stuff like this as well.
I would be okay if they did that 12 plus. Just attach it to Guile. Let people 10 and below just have their fun. Or
I don't mind that.
Like they very clearly made 12 a breakpoint, or want to make 12 a breakpoint. Let 12 be the heavy, sweaty, like tough, equal playing field grounds, and let the holiday buffs just have people have fun in the 11s and below.
What would you do about the ring stuff?
It's still technically equal ground. Everybody has equal access to... you mean how you could do it like right now?
Faction transferring in the ring upgrade.
I don't know, man.
I think anybody who has more than +6 item levels on a ring, if that's a thing, they should probably take action against. Which is a weird, right? Because like, then do you refund the faction transfers? Like, if someone spent $500 on faction transfers, like, I don't know. Obviously, no one has any sympathy for those people, so everyone's going to say no to that. But
yeah, I mean, I have no sympathy for them, but also like, would you suspend them? Would you ban them? Or would you just remove the item levels on the ring? I think that you probably just remove the item levels on the ring, call it a day. And then at that point, yeah, no harm, no foul, like whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, in my opinion, the more that I think about it, is like, unless it's having like a dramatic effect on the economy or something like that, I think it's a matter of time thing. Like, I think within like 1 day or 2 days, if somebody's doing a major exploit, I think it's fair grounds to say like, okay, they should take action against this person. But at some point, you have to be like, well, like, is this even an exploit? Is Blizzard gonna fix it? Like, should I do this? And I think that like the longer the exploit sits, the more you have to be lenient about it and not be trying to dish out consequences. Because like, what are you gonna do? Why wouldn't you? Like, you're just an idiot at this point if you're not doing. If you're like, if you care about pushing Mythic Plus keys and you're not bringing in all the extra raid buffs and doing the mistletoe stuff, like, you're just an idiot.
I mean, what I mean, we got proven time and time again that is certainly the stance that Blizzard takes as well. You remember the Psychic Link critter stuff. You remember the Outlaw Rogue stuff. I mean, it's like Blizzard clearly doesn't care.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to be like that downer about it. I know we sound like pretty negative. Maybe Tettle's a little down because he's been still gaming, but it just sort of, it's been the nature of Mythic Plus this whole time. You know, like, you just sort of look for the tech and the weird stuff, you know, and it's very hard to draw the line. Like, oh, you know, standing in this spot makes mobs bug out and can make mobs fall through the floor, and you can stand in this spot and this boss won't use this spell. And it's like, there's so many different things that it's very hard to draw the line. So I don't mean to be like, you know, all of a sudden be, oh, woe is us, Mythic Plus is ruined because of exploits, because this has been a thing since the beginning of time, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it's more just like changing my philosophy on it. Like, normally I wouldn't have, like, you know, I didn't do any of the Psychic Link garbage. I didn't group up with Outlaw Rogues. Maybe I'm just gonna go out here and just be like, whatever, who cares? If it gets,
I think if something is wild, you give it a day and you see, and then if they're not going to do anything about it, then fuck it.
Like, dude, actually, I don't even know how you can even get the follower buffs anymore. Can somebody DM that to me as well so I can get those also? Like, I want some bonus stats. Like, all right, yeah, I guess sounds good to me.
I'm gonna suggest something unless somebody stops me, that I heard that it might have something to do with leaving the group like really fast.
Okay.
And then like getting like, or like porting out and then like getting them to apply it to you while you port out or something.
Yeah, I've heard it's like frame perfect or something. Frame perfectly.
Okay, so just time. Like spam zone in and zone out. Like,
I don't know the exact details, but that's what I remember hearing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Dumb as hell.
I don't know the exact thing. I don't care. I'm doing my weekly farm, and that's it. So this is way more time than
I mean, we had to give the people a little bit, you know. Like, if the people are listening here, you know, we got to feed them a little bit of there, you know.
Yeah. Okay. What's up with the Gilded Crests from Delves? Oh yeah, I forgot.
Oh man, this one worried me a little bit.
This took over Twitter and like Reddit for like a day. So we found out during the data mining that Gilded Crests will be available from the Delves Gilded Stash Tier 11, which means Tier 11 Delves. First question: have you done Tier 11 Delves?
I've dabbled in a little bit in 10 and 11s.
No, I have not.
Okay, Grell, what did you think of Tier 11 Delves?
So there was a delve that I did specifically on my priest, and it was very slow and very painstaking, but I managed to get through to the last boss. Then the last boss cast an ability on me that would essentially drain my life and do unhealable amounts of damage and heal the boss. And I had to kick it, and I was playing a Disc Priest, and I didn't have a kick. And the boss was absolutely 100% unkillable in a 10. And I just had to walk out of the delve. After spending like over 30 minutes trying, like, slow clearing this delve, I had to walk out of it. And like, maybe now, if I would go back into that delve with full 639 gear, like, I don't remember exactly what my gear was, but maybe I could go back in and do it now, but I remember feeling like that was 100% impossible on my class. Yeah, there's no way I was going to complete that delve with what I had. And I feel like putting the whole point of making the harder delves is because, well, it might not be fair to all classes and it might be really gimmicky, but we'll have the challenges there for fun. And now they're putting rewards on the things, and it's like, to me, it seems it's the equivalent of like putting very good rewards on like very, very high keys. And it's like, so many people are not going to want to do this or enjoy doing it, but maybe feel obligated to, that it's possible that maybe they significantly nerf the delves and make them a lot easier. But I'm a little bit worried about this. I think people are gonna, especially people that are struggling getting Gilded Crests already. If those sorts of people, I don't know, unless you're playing like a class that's very good for soloing, I don't think you're gonna have a good time in tier 11 delves.
Yeah. So just to kind of go through this, there's a string that we data mined, which is when you complete a delve with lives remaining on tier 11, a gilded stash will appear in the treasure room containing 6 gilded crests, and there's another portion that says gilded stash looted blank out of 3, meaning that it looks like you get 18 gilded crests per week from delves. So yeah,
Total?
yeah, 18 gilded crests per week total per delve,
Out,
from delves.
out of the 90 cap.
90. Yeah, so 20%.
I mean, you got Gilded Crests from maps, right? Already?
Yes, so it was like 2.
I think it was
And that only
3.
required 8. Was it 3? It was 2 or 3. It
It
a
was
low amount.
very little. It was very little that you
And RNG.
I'm not
I
sure
mean, it doesn't
if
affect
I
us,
care
right?
about this.
Yeah, it doesn't affect us at
Yeah.
all.
I mean, as someone that did tier 11 delves, maybe like twice, this content sucked.
I'm just trying to think, do I care? I'm not doing a tier 12 delve regardless.
Like,
Is this bad
agree.
is this bad for players? I guess that's a more generalized question.
from Blizzard's perspective, I think they're starting low. Because it's better to start low and increase it than it is to start high and never be able to remove it without significant backlash.
Okay.
I think, like, we've seen that in other games or even in WoW itself. You go too high, you remove it, you end up, like, pissing off the majority of your player base.
Yeah, look at 10s this season.
Yeah. So, I think that this is a conservative, low bar that they can see how it goes. But I also think tier 11s are fucking hard. And I don't think the majority of people will be doing this until at least a couple weeks into the season. And completely dependent on your class as well. A particular note, Brand is going to be able to tank next tier.
Woo!
Which is great. I hope he's able to hold threat. But assuming he is, that's going to help out a lot of people because I'm pretty sure that the thing that people were dying to in Delves was just the white swings.
Yep.
Because some classes are not built to kite, which is what you needed to do at a tier 11-12 unless you were a tank. So overall, I think this is a good start. I'm not against it. But if you do Mythic Plus at all, 110 will beat that immediately.
They gotta give Brain a kick.
He does have a kick.
He's got a kick on CD.
He does kick on CD. The problem is he kicks random shadow bolts instead of the thing you care about.
Oh. Okay, he's got a kick for me.
Yes, there you go. I think people wanted more.
What were people mad
18 is
about?
really low.
I guess.
Well, so this is at least what my suggestion is. I don't really mind Gilded Crests being gate kept or not gate kept. It doesn't really affect me. Clearly, they wanted them to be prestigious, and now they're kind of walking it back a little bit because people didn't like that, and because of how many were required. I just think that the gameplay of tier 11 delves isn't good, and I think that if they want to throw people a bone and let them slowly build up some Gilded Crests, I think they should just make them available at 8s. Like, I don't... Like, to me, I think that just give people... Like, if they want to throw people a bone for doing delves, then make them available in +8 delves. Now, granted, like Squishy said, they are making some changes. It's possible that tier 11 delves will not be the same as what we know, so maybe tier 11 delves will be more manageable for all classes, but, you know... If you're somebody who plays like a holy priest and you're, not a super, dungeon gamer and you can't get Gilded Crests from dungeons and then you feel, like what, now you're going to go into a delve and like suffer through a +11 as a holy priest. Like, I don't mind Gilded Crests coming from delves, but I just don't think 11 delves are good gameplay. I think that they're like some of the most niche type of content. Maybe there were tons of people that like pushed up and did all those delves. Actually, let me rephrase. I think doing them repeatedly, it's very niche content. I think, if you pushed up and did the highest level of delve or did a plus whatever in every delve, I don't think that's that crazy. Like, I think that's a cool way to game the system. But for someone to log in and do 3 tier 11 delves or more every single week, I think is like, a bit much, and I doubt there's like basically anybody doing that right now.
It's brutal.
I mean, I don't mind these people getting Gilded Crests. Like,
Yeah, I think the problem is just how annoying it will be to get them. Like, I don't mind them getting the Gilded Crest. I just think that they should just put the Gilded Crest at a lower level of delves, especially because like 18 is not that many. It's not like they're giving them tons of Gilded Crests. Like, they're just gonna, a small little drip feed to eventually allow them to craft good items. I have no problem with that at all. Like, leave it at +8s.
It looked like the commenters had about 3 different stances. There was the first stance of like, you actually deserve nothing, actually do harder content, get good, Lamau. There was a second group of people that were like, dude, this is way too high. Why is it starting at +11? It should start at +8. +8s are a lot more achievable. And then there's the third subset of people that were like, yeah, this is actually a good change. Not bad.
I think one thing to mention as well is with the crest changes, once you're done with the runed crests, you're gonna be able to trade up. And instead of with the crest changes that recently happened on live servers, you're gonna be able to get 2 packs of Gilded Crests a week instead of 1, which means that you get a bonus 30.
Yes.
When you trade up. Yeah. So you're gonna get, like, if you do these delves, big if, but you're gonna get a minimum of 30 from ruined crests in the first place. 30 Gilded Crests from trading up your Rune Crests, which isn't terrible.
So you can craft something every other week-ish.
Yeah. Because what, 60 now, right?
Yeah, 60 now.
Yeah.
That's not bad, yeah. I forgot about the craft up thing, too.
The crafting changes...
Gilded Crests easier to get again.
I don't mind the crafting change again. I think that was...
Do you remember the interview where when they were talking about, like, we think the on-ramp for Mythic Plus is too difficult because people are coming with too good gear for delves?
Yeah.
Aren't they just making this worse right now, technically?
Yeah.
Okay. Like it's a possibility. It's probably either going to stay exactly the same or slightly worse, right?
The problem with the on-ramp, and this is just my opinion, but the problem with the on-ramp is that, like, there's never a point in doing 2s, 3s, 4s. And this is the issue prior to the squish as well. And you guys might feel differently, but like, I think that one of the coolest things and one of the biggest reasons that I thought that the squish was good is that, like, whenever you remove those first 10 key levels, those 10 key levels were obsolete anyways. Like, nobody was ever doing like a 2 through a 10 there. But now people are still not doing 2s, 3s, 4s, probably all the way up until like 6s. You probably do like 7+, but those are the only key levels that even matter for anything. And I don't think 7s are like a great place for you to like learn a dungeon. And I think that the on-ramp is just too hard still.
Well, it just has to do with the rewards, right? Like on-ramp to Mythic Plus is a little bit of a misleading phrase because really it's like you're a World of War, like, and they designed the game like this. They want it like this, right? You're a World of Warcraft player. You log in, people, and you decide, like, okay, what is the best way for me to get gear right now on this character? And then you do that, whether it's, walking around picking up orbs or doing M plus or do whatever, right? And it's like, so it's not really an on-ramp to Mythic Plus, but what happens is if you're following this chain of what's the best thing to do, eventually you're going to wind up with, okay, your next step is do +8 keys. And it's like, no other steps previous to that can compare at all in difficulty.
Do tier 8 delves, and then it's, do +7s for hero track gear. Spam +7s, and you're just like, well, that's a very rough spot for someone looking for the path of least resistance. I still think that maybe if they move the hero track gear down to like +4 or something like that, it would maybe help the on-ramp problem a little bit.
I don't even know if that would.
I don't think it solves it, but I do think it would help at least a smidge. Because then it, like, you don't like want to start you're like heavily incentivized to start at a +7 right now, which you get the challenger's peril, like, I don't know. It's a bit tough. Challenger's Peril does start 7, right? Okay, I'm just making sure I didn't make that up.
I mean, it does currently. We'll see what happens next season. Because they said they were going to try to fix the on-ramp. There has been no indication that they have changed anything about this right now. We haven't seen, a post or anything from data mining right now.
No.
Nothing about the on-ramp.
This is fixing it. This is fixing it.
Okay.
I agree that out of everything that happened in the like this sort of new Mythic Plus for this expansion, the timer for like increased timer for deaths, I think was like the most unnecessary and the worst received of anything by far. And like that's the thing that I expected to change the most, like for sure. And it is definitely a little bit weird to see nothing really being said about that yet.
If there's one change that you would make, what would it be? To
To
help the
what?
on-ramp. Sorry, to help the on-ramp for players. Just one change. It could be as big or small as you think is necessary.
I just think they have to look at that rewards curve of like, you know, again, sort of like what I said about like where people are going for loot. And I think that like they either need to decide like they need to give better loot earlier, like to give better loot in like +4s and +5s,
Yeah.
or they need to like, well, I mean, or somehow smooth it out. So like you need to take a little bit of a pit stop in 3s, 4s, 5s before you move up. Like I think the fact that it goes straight from like basically solo world content to +7, +8 keys, which are reasonably difficult, is bad. I think there like needs to be another step in there somehow. And the problem is just like how easy or hard do they want to make the rewards? You know, like do they want to just say screw it, like give Gilded Crests at +4, or do they want to say like, you know, make everything super hard? And it depends on how exactly they want it, but that's what they need to do.
Okay. I have two answers. One is the fundamentally, I think, correct answer that they will never do, which is nerf Delve Loot. That will never happen, and I don't think they should, but I think that fixes the on-ramp issue. But it will never happen. The Band-Aid fix in that case is, I think, a newbie buff that would apply to keys 7 and like 7. It's some number here. 7. Well, I'll say 7 and below. That gives a player who has not timed that many keys, maybe like one of each dungeon. Like, let's say the first time they have not timed a dungeon in that spot, they get this buff that maybe prevents them from deaths counting towards Challenger's Peril, and a slight health and damage buff. Slight health, damage, healing buff.
Yeah.
That sounds like some Final Fantasy shit.
That is exactly some Final Fantasy shit, which is exactly why I brought it up. Other games do this. They call it some kind of newbie buff. Lost Ark does it as well. I think that is a pretty okay solution to the current problem. The alternative is something just like, you know, when you bring a new player, you get bonuses, because let's be honest here, bonus Valor Stones ain't exactly it right now.
All right, and so this week of episode 75 of The Bench, we have new exploits in Mythic Plus. Players exploiting new player buffs inside of dungeons, able to keep it for the entire time. Squishy, what are you thinking about this, as they were able to keep this mistletoe buff, which grants 20% player power while a new character is inside of a dungeon? What are you thinking about this?
Well, as Blizzard hasn't banned for anything in Mythic Plus in the last, 50 weeks, I think it's just go for it, man. Just do it.
What a hilarious metagame. Imagine you like what you do is you have like everybody has alts, and like you have one set of characters that you only raid on and you never do keys, and you just save them for the end of the season. And then like you just do like the Omega newbie buff push week.
I said 7 and below, to be clear, but yes, I understand.
No, we're just making shit up.
I know. Yeah, it's a rough situation to be in, but it just kind of came to mind because the on-ramp is definitely something we've been talking about, and they've been talking about a lot too.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know. I would love to see like a restructure of the dungeons to have like, Mythic Plus actually start for a lot of players at +2. I actually don't even know what the solve is though. Like,
is there a world where they just delete 2 through 5?
Oh jeez, delete even more keys.
Well, you would never delete it, right? You would just remove, like, you would just like squish these up, right?
Or make Mythic 0 equivalent to a 5 with no timer, and then just start at 6 or 7. Like,
yeah. The problem I see is like, how do you get people to learn the dungeons?
M0, I think, is the fundamentally correct answer there. It's just M0 rewards are that bad and that easy.
I mean, M0 is just too easy.
Because realistically, M0 is it should be a good place to learn. You can die as many times as you want. You can take as much time as you want. Like, I don't see a reason.
The fact that you need like a 60 to 75% health and damage modifier before people actually start dying, I think is a problem with the system, yeah.
I think the other thing is, I've talked about this a lot, is even on the low difficulties, have those one-shot mechanics that one-shot you on every difficulty. They should not be every mechanic, but for the big boss mechanics or the big trash mechanics, the trash mechanic that has a 10-second long cast time, that should still insta-kill you. I think that will tell people, hey, you need to do something about this or else you will die. Because sometimes the only way to learn is through mistakes, and that's
yeah, and I think that like learning the dungeons is actually pretty hard, and if you don't have any consequences, it's actually pretty difficult to actually learn the dungeons. And I think that there should be like a pretty low stress environment to be able to learn them.
Yeah. Actually, there is one more thing: scale health faster than damage.
I would love to see that. Yeah,
same actually,
dude. I mean, that's just like. I think that's just like bare minimum. It should never be damage scales faster than health, but somehow it always happens.
Yeah, I think it's something wrong with their scaling between seasons.
The linear scaling thing.
I started to look into it a little bit in what is the last expansion, Dragonflight. I'm pretty sure the ratio of how much damage goes up between seasons on enemy damage versus the amount of health that they gain is wrong. But I didn't look into it enough because I didn't care enough.
Well, I think it's because they want I think it changed a while ago. I remember them making like pretty big swings at this in Legion. I mean, this was a long ass time ago, where the people didn't feel like their player damage was increasing enough between tiers, and Blizzard wanted to take pretty big swings at that to make sure that you're like an eye level upgrade actually felt like a meaningful upgrade, right? So they increased the amount of damage that you gained per eye level. And I think
no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like between seasons, enemy damage goes up by like 44% or something, but enemy health only goes up by like 30-something%.
Oh, you think it's like a mob?
If I recall correctly, there was something like that I was looking at in season 2. Completely forgot about it after, but I would have to look into it on this transition if I remember and have time to.
I feel like it's a player thing because I feel like if you look at the beginning of the expansion, you'll be doing say 3 times as much damage as you were at the end of the expansion as you were at the beginning, but you don't have 3 times as much HP. And it might actually be both.
It could be.
What do they do with Motherlode?
So there's a lot of changes, and as Growl, the expert of Motherlode, have you seen these, Growl?
I glanced through them. There's definitely a lot of them.
Yes, so I figured like there are a lot of changes. Like I was going through it. This is the first one that I posted. Going to spread them out a little over the holiday season, but wanted to go through and just kind of discuss some of the changes to Motherlode because Motherlode was a hated dungeon by many and a really fun dungeon to some. But there was also a lot of weird shit that you did in order to make the dungeon happen, like skipping the entire last 2 sections, trying not to get grease gunned. Stuff like that. So there were a lot of issues with it, and just kind of see what people, you guys think about it from the top. So like just going section by section if you want to go to the.
Yeah, I can skim over some of the stuff.
Do you know if they changed count?
I looked briefly. I didn't see any change to count.
I fully expect them to make
expect them to.
Amount of count increase, but basically to echo what Squishy said, Motherlode was a dungeon that was really tough early on, and then as people got better and better at dealing with all of the little nuances of the trash, I think it became a really fun dungeon. But that being said, I don't think that's the gameplay that Blizzard's going for nowadays. They reworked a lot of the trash in the beginning. So the Peacekeeper had a buff where when it hit the tank, it would like chain lightning essentially off the tank.
Yeah.
And now it reads... Yes, and so now it reads melee zap 5 players when it connects instead of 3, but does that mean they increase the range?
I believe so.
Yeah, so the way I read it is basically now that's not a chain lightning, it's just gonna do pulsing group damage. So I think the idea of pulling a bunch of Peacekeepers together and kiting them like people used to do is not gonna be a thing anymore.
Is it not just
gonna be a 1 per pack max probably? maybe 2.
Is it not going to be more effective to kite them now? I just don't expect you to have multiple.
Well, you could still like eat the melees. You just couldn't. You would just have to have like CDs and stuff. I don't know. Like maybe you could.
I mean, just don't get meleeed, right?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't slow them or anything though. Like
it depends on the damage too.
But they stopped the cast. They would like stop in the middle of like nowhere and
do
start
the like
casting.
little
yeah,
shield.
that's right.
I mean, maybe it's possible. I guess I'm more reading on their intentions rather than the exact change. And to me, the intention to this looks like they're trying to make this be a big AoE mob that you can't pull a bunch of.
I agree. Because I mean, there was a whole boatload of issues with the Peacekeepers. Like the guy that grease gunned hopped in, like you had to pull them in a certain spot or knock them right away or something.
Oh yeah, well that was to knock them to specific
Peacekeepers
because you would get like double count basically from them. That was weird.
Well, we'll see if that actually like happens as well. But Awakened.
Yeah, so a couple other mobs that got changed. The thugs, those are the guys that do the charge. If you got to high enough keys, that would one-shot you, and they're actually increasing their damage, but who knows what that means. But the charge no longer stuns, which is nice.
I mean, look at how they're dealing with the thugs in this old run, where they're pre-Ring of Frosting themselves.
Yeah, you had to like blink it, or like Nova it, or like have a... Yeah, there was a lot of
that was also
stuff.
because the buff that they had buffed all their damage, not just their attacks.
Oh,
like,
the in
they
rage?
changed so that the buff no longer will buff that charge. So it should theoretically be more survivable as well.
I was under the impression that you generally didn't allow that buff to sit. Like you would remove.
You would purge it or soothe it as well.
It, yeah. So I think those things are still really nasty without the buff. But so another change they made: the hired assassins basically had a charge up and then an AOE. And they changed them to be like the spiders in Arakara, where the AoE just starts right away and just starts doing damage, and then you just stun it or whatever to stop it. And I think they reduced the damage of the poison pretty significantly, which was like, the scary part was that it would stack up poison.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, the first area, the casters, the refreshment vendors, now is like, instead of it being like a quick channel that you have to kick and then stuns, now it just is a longer channel that stuns but does less damage, but your healer can dispel it is the big one.
It's like the Necrotic Wake ones now, it seems like. Because now the entire channel stuns, which is not how it worked before. So...
Yeah, drain fluids, right? So it's really nasty if your healer gets it, but otherwise it gives the healer an out to dispel it.
Yeah. And I think there were packs with like 2 or 3 back in the day, so like, yeah. I think like the things that I would like to see in this area, and obviously we can't tell, is the whole mech jockey situation. Because making sure to pull the jockeys in a specific spot or knocking them to get specific count was really rough. And I think that is what I would like to see fixed most in this first area that hasn't been seen so far.
Grease gun. I think that's the thing that's...
Yeah. So Grease Gun, for the people that didn't play, it was basically just like an instant cast spell that would go off and just do insane amounts of damage randomly to people. And so it was like, it got to the point where it could like one shot, or even in key levels that weren't that high, like if you got charged by the thug, for example, and then Grease Gun, which are two things that had no telegraph, it would just hit you instantly. You would just like get comboed and die.
How does
the worst part about Grease Gun is if you look at the tooltip for it, it says primary threat target on it.
Yeah, even though it doesn't, it's not only to the tank.
It absolutely does not. But if they fix it so it only hits the tank, that's fine. There's literally no issue with that anymore. But yeah, that's the first section.
I don't like this. I actually don't like this hired assassin change either. How you'd have to CC the hail before is you'd have to like wait for the first tick to go off before you CC it. I don't know. This mob feels like a lot, just in general. And making it start fanning immediately is like pretty tough.
If I recall correctly, Halo Flechettes didn't do damage unless the poison was active.
I think it did damage. I think that
really?
From memory, I'm pretty sure the poison was negligible, and I'm pretty sure the hail was actually a large portion of the damage.
A big thing in this area was just the fact that so many, like, because of the thugs and the grease guns, and the
Sanguine.
potential ice spritzer, there was so much unexpected like burst damage that you could take. So even like these little things that are doing 20% of your health or 25% of your health, that in combination with other things just instantly kills you.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, because of how high the unavoidable damage is in this area. But the other thing though is like it'll fully depend on how they tune it. Like if they tune it so there's a lot of unavoidable damage, but it's more mellow, which they never do, but I can still pray. I think it'll be fine. But yeah, I think if that is the case, that this stuff still comes close to one-shotting you, like yeah, the Fan of Knives always doing one tick or going off is going to be really tough.
I'm beyond over one shots. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're slowing down this area a lot with the change to the Peacekeeper also.
That's what I expect, yeah.
Which could be good or bad. I don't really know.
I mean, it might be, but the thing is, if they make it too deadly, then the Peacekeepers might just be do not pull, as in avoid all the fucking mech jockeys in the area.
The problem is that these were the most valuable mobs to pull in the entire dungeon because you were doubling up on count with them.
Yeah,
and
I mean, that might be the issue, actually. It's just like, the entire intent, I'm pretty sure, was to let the mech jockey cast on the thing. You had an opportunity to stop it, and if you did, it was bad.
Yes.
I wonder if they're trying to get back to that, where like activating a Peacekeeper is the worst thing you could do. So you actively want to stop the jockey from activating.
Yeah, the problem is that you were doubling down on count because
I mean, that might be the intent though. Make the Peacekeepers so deadly that they're not worth it, or just make them 0 count.
I can believe that. Refreshment interchange. There's not a ton of these. I think there's a pack with 2 of them. The problem I have with these is kind of the same thing that I have with like a bunch of the multi-caster mobs. So they have 2 casts. They have the ice spritzer and they have the refreshment cola. How you would do it in the past is you would like CC the spritzer cast and you would kick the cola. And you know, I just don't think mobs like that are like great with the change that they've done to AoE stops.
Yeah. I mean, Motherlode's immediately gonna watching this like +2 fun at minimum due to no sanguine. So.
Oh yeah, the fact that they keep sanguining these Peacekeepers, I'm really thankful that I'm
really tilted just watching this.
Yeah, I just watched these mobs heal to full and sanguine. I just laughed. Just like, all right, cool.
All right, second area then.
Second area didn't get changed too much. They buffed the little mini boss guy, which is kind of like nothing burger. The Stone Furies, which are like the rock elementals, they almost like reverse them compared to the Fan of Knives. Before that would be like a cast that you'd have to stun right away. Now it's going to be a cast that you kick, it looks like.
You always did this as a giga pull. Now they're making it actually easier to giga pull. I mean, look at this. This is the pull back then. I think it's like triple. Yeah, it's like a triple pack.
It was a triple pull.
Now you can a lot more easily do this because these mine rats do a lot less damage to your group.
So the big one though was the Earth Shapers had Earth Shock. That was the really high
that's an
damage
invisible cast, wasn't it?
Yeah. Another instant cast invisible thing that you could still do like really, really big pulls in here, but I think the throw rock damage will be nice, but I don't think this area will change much.
I don't think so either. I mean, it depends if the volley is kickable or not. It could just be your healer needs to heal, like
or you're saying the quake or whatever.
Yeah, the quake. The quake could just be I'm going to cast a big AoE. Here's 3 seconds to prep.
It doesn't necessarily say you can kick it. It just says it's
we can't tell that. So
because
the clear thing that I've been noticing is they really like AoE damage on trash because they don't want healers to be bored and doing damage. Like that's been a clear trend. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
The problem is non-telegraphed invisible damage. Like
I agree.
I think the bombers in Borealis, I think that they do too much damage. Let me cook for a second. I think they do too much damage, but at least they telegraph who they're doing damage to, so you can actually like do something. I think that invisible
their target.
Dingo.
Invisible casts are no, it's like instant. These are like instant cast invisible casts too that happen from multiple mobs in this dungeon.
Surely they'll fix that.
That was infuriating.
So the third section, this was usually the nastiest.
It
was hard to group stuff. There were some pretty scary mobs. They're changing the way stuff works. Echo Blade, which was pretty nasty because it would it was like I don't know exactly how it worked, but it was some sort of silence that was like, it was either like a frontal or like an AoE, but basically if your team got hit with a nasty Echo Blade, it was like Jover, because your whole team would get silenced. Now it's just going to do damage, it looks like, and do more AoE. Same with the Energy Lash from the Mastermind. That used to be a single target channel that was like uninterruptible, and now it looks like it pulses damage to random people instead of doing heavy single target. So it looks like they're trying to give some counterplay to the stuff in this area, but also this is more group damage.
It reminds me of the Fire Nova from Soul in Everbloom, where it just hits a random people.
Oh my god. Dude, the Technician's Overcharge is no longer a magic buff. This is the thing that your mages would spell steal the entire dungeon, and it would give them infinite haste. I forgot about this.
Yep.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And then the final section, honestly, I don't even know what Charge Shot is.
So the big mechs, they like would it was like a weird like channel thing. Cluster? It would like target you, and then you would like get a big crosshair above your head, and then it would like shoot you, and it would just, if it ever didn't hit the tank, it would just do like absurd amounts of damage and just like kill them if you ever somehow pulled it.
So the problem with this Charge Shot is that it was really buggy, and your tank actually can't have 2 charge shots on them at once. So you'd have to pull the War Machines. You'd have to pull the War Machines desynced to make sure that they were actually going to be lined up correctly. Also, these War Machines, over under on them allowing you to have the infinite count farm still. What do we think?
Yeah, so these guys would drop mines on the ground, and the mines were the same ones as the ones that are there already, and they would give you count. And so what you would do is you would pull these mobs, but you wouldn't actually focus this War Machine. So see how Andy's like grabbing other stuff and they're killing other mobs, and then they're letting the War Machine just drop these mines and then killing the mines to get like a little bit of extra count. And you would actually rely on getting not a ton, but like several count from this part of the dungeon from that. And I don't know, I don't think it's a game changer or anything, but it's something it doesn't seem like current Blizzard would do.
I mean, they have that in our car right now with the flyer guy.
Yeah, they like respawn or whatever.
Yeah.
The super flyers.
All right.
Hopefully they fix the charge shot thing.
There's a bunch of boss reworks too, right?
Yeah. So the first boss is a pretty big one. Because one of the first things on the first boss was, especially on high keys, you ran out of room towards the end because the audience threw coins around the boss. And if the boss was near coins, he would suck them up and gave a damage buff. So you kited around the room. On high key, especially as the fight took longer, you would run out of room, forcing him to suck up the coins and gain the damage buff. It seems that they've kind of reworked the mechanic altogether, where he would just periodically suck up all the coins near him, and then you can kick footballs into him to remove the stacks of the buff.
Oh, nice. I don't even think
that's kind of... that's kind of
a,
like a good change, I think.
I don't even think it's a high key issue. I think it just makes it a lot more reasonable to expect like pugs to do it well. Because I remember this fight, if you didn't move the boss perfectly, say your tank was a little bit slow on this move right here, it would just get the boss would just get stuck.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite. This is a huge boon to lower key doers, because basically the way it worked before is the boss, if it was near coins for too long, it would just suck them up.
Yeah.
And so the problem is, if the tank wasn't aware, it would suck them up very easily, because you can see how long this cast is, right? So like if Andy wouldn't have moved that boss right away, it would have queued that claw and then just grabbed those coins immediately after the claw, because it was sitting next to the coins for too long. Now the suck-ins are going to be way more predictable. And so now the tank just needs to know, okay, drag it away from coins when it gets full energy. It's a much more sense-making mechanic.
Yeah. Because that mechanic exists, though, I wouldn't be surprised if they threw more coins.
Okay.
Especially since throw coins now deals damage to players in the impact zone.
Yep, now it's a swirly.
So now it's a swirly. So I have a feeling that they're not going to be always thrown on the boss. They're going to be thrown on players, which makes you either want to stack and you're going to have to dodge or something like that.
Do you know if Shocking Claw is now a frontal? Like it was a frontal before. Sorry. Do you know if it has a graphic? Because like, look at this right here. Shocking Claw is being cast.
Yeah.
I'm okay with this easy telegraph. All right, this isn't some tiny model like where you're squinting to see which way the boss is facing. I'm okay with this man having an untelegraphed frontal.
The problem is if you don't know, and it's kind of like we were talking about like learning dungeons earlier. The problem is if you don't know what the ability does, it's impossible to actually like learn. You're like, what the fuck?
I mean, I think that's a fair critique of it.
I don't know. Blizzard normally does a pretty good job of like with their visuals kind of giving you a rough idea of what they do. Like think about the swirlies that they give you, how the swirlies have different outlines depending on what you're supposed to do with them. I think that putting a frontal without any telegraph is a bit rough because it's also kind of tough to tell where the boss is facing. Like look at that Shock and Claw. If you wouldn't know any better, look at where the Shock and Claw looks like it's facing. It looks like it's facing here, but it's actually facing here, which is pretty weird. Like I would have wagered money that it was facing this direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair.
Definitely an out-of-date visual compared to what they've been doing lately. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they add the triangle there or something.
I think
they absolutely could.
I think it's a good change, though. I think that this was a boss that was too hard for players who didn't have a tank that was really on top of shit.
The last thing with that boss also is they increased the number of stacks on the damage amp to 6. And I don't know why they did that, because you never even got to 5 in the first place. Which makes me think that they are increasing the number of footballs you need to kick into the boss.
Oh, God. Okay, healer job. Healer job.
Because, right, like, there were 3 bombs, right, in the past?
There were.
And the buff stacked to 5, but they just increased the cap on the buff to 6. So why would they do that?
I don't know.
So, yeah.
Maybe they're increasing the amount. It'd be weird.
This boss is a meme. Was a meme, at least.
This boss was either criminally hard or completely a joke, and there was no in between. Because there's a health threshold where these Earth Ragers just, like, you can't kill them in time, and they just, like, whoop your ass.
Yeah, so Azarok was a weird boss. These Earth Ragers would fixate people. If they hit you, it did a lot of damage. And also the boss does this resonant pulse cast that does AoE. The thing is, though, all of these Earth Ragers were so slow and they were so easy to CC that what you would do with this boss is you would literally just keep them CC'd around the boss and like kite them around in circles. And then whenever they would cast, you would just stun the cast. And so I'm kind of wondering if they're trying to stop that. So I'm not sure, maybe Squishy can explain it better. So it looks like now when the boss does that pulse cast that makes the ads cast, it also is going to do damage. So it might be the case that like if the ads ever get damage off, it's going to be really nasty. Also, I'm reading something about like healing targets with Azurite infusion. I'm not fully understanding these changes.
I'm not either. So the Azurite infusion is the thing that, well, I guess we don't know because nobody did it. But the boss buffs the ads periodically.
Yeah. And he makes them take 100% increased damage, right?
Yeah, they take bonus damage, but they deal bonus damage.
Yeah.
Now, before he empowers them, because previously he would empower any one of them that were un-CC'd, and that meant that they were like 20% and didn't matter. You would just finish it off. Now, before he empowers them, he heals them to full.
Nice.
So you're always going to have a full health empowered ad.
The problem with them too, they would break out of CC whenever they got empowered.
Yeah.
So like you'd have them like full leg swept and they just immediately break out.
Yeah, so now you're gonna have a full health empowered ad. And now while the ad is empowered, it pulses damage. So depending on the strength of that empowerment, you're probably just going to want to focus it down rather than just kite it in circles until it eventually dies.
I guess maybe this is fine if Jagged Cut's damage is reduced by 47%. I mean, the bleed from the ad was like unhealable.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty rough. But we also have evokers, which can remove bleeds now.
I mean, is this actually a bleed? I don't know if this is actually.
I think so. You could pop it,
yep,
right?
Mechanic bleeding, right there. Mechanic bleeding.
Nice. Great. Dwarf is back.
Yeah, there's also a new ability called Azurite Aftershock, which I don't even know what that means. It's just listed in the dungeon journal, so it does stuff.
I have no idea what that even means. Anyways,
I don't either. My best guess is when the boss pulses, he like AoEs. All the ads try to AoE as well, and any cast that goes off does bonus damage or something. I don't know.
This is the dumbest boss of all time.
And they made it worse somehow. Grau, you wanna go through it?
Well, I'm gonna give him faith here. Rixa Flux Flame, basically, it was a space denial fight, and she would also put out 2 debuffs. The debuffs were insanely high damage. Like, basically, you would have to have some sort of rotation of immunities and things to deal with them. You wouldn't just tank. Even 1 debuff would be really nasty. Now, she uses 3 debuffs per phase instead of 2, which means that you're not going to have anywhere close to an immunity rotation unless you're running like double Shadow Priest or something crazy. And the damage didn't change. So I'm assuming, at least hoping, that it's going to be something more in line with like the second boss of Siege of Borealis, you know, where it like puts out dots on everybody and they're pretty nasty, but it's like healable. But I don't know. They were really scary before.
It was baitable, by the way. So it was baitable on the nearest 3 targets to the boss.
Yeah, it would always just target the nearest people, so you could pick who they go to too, which does seem like that's kind of how Siege works, sort of, and it's probably how this boss is going to work too. So like, okay, so you can kind of be like in or out depending on if you have personals or not.
Dwarf is back again. Yep. Good point.
Did Dwarf ever leave?
No. Hasn't left at all.
I mean, the big thing for me is I don't know why Propellant Blast damage or now ticks every 10th of a second. Like, whoa, you have to dodge that code or die at this point. A 50% damage nerf is not going to fix the fact that got buffed to 0.1 seconds.
This is an insane number.
Yeah, I mean, a 50% damage nerf, but then increasing the speed by 10 times. So, I mean, that's basically a 500% damage buff, right?
Yeah.
If you were to stand in it for a full second.
I mean, it's entirely possible they added a visual to it, because that also did not have a visual, right?
That is true.
It had a visual. Did it?
After it started casting.
Right, after
doing
damage.
Yeah, like right there, nothing.
Yeah, I'm
not
in love with the looking at the boss model to tell where the frontals go. That's
like,
well, especially with a small dwarf like
with
this,
a small
from a big
goblin. Yes,
or a goblin,
I agree with that. I'm okay with the big, like bulky Hulk with a 3-second cast time to not stand in front of it.
Well,
I think that is fine.
That guy was fine. I actually didn't have an issue with that one.
Or this thing, frontal, because it's obvious where the front is. But a tiny goblin, I think you need an indicator, and maybe that's why they changed that.
Yeah, okay.
This guy, I didn't really read too much. They added new abilities though, so there's that. It just looked like they lowered some of the damage of some of the I think Buster Shot is the tank buster, and then increased the damage of Gatling gun. I don't remember any instances of line of sighting the Gatling gun, but I could be wrong.
Isn't that the stairs?
Oh, I thought that was like Z-axis.
No,
I guess you're right.
You would LS on the stairs, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Oh, maybe it was LOS.
I mean, they just killed the stair strat, which is fine, I guess.
Well, yeah, a lot of these bosses in general though were quite simple. Like even for BFA standards, these were not really like that complex or difficult
this one's
bosses.
chill. Like
what I will say though is a lot of these bosses had, like, from a pug perspective, they had things that could go wrong pretty easily. Like organized groups made short work of these bosses, but like this guy, for example, he like with the planes that are going around the room, knowing where to tank the boss and like knowing where to stand was like pretty important. And in pugs, people just didn't get it. Like there are some pretty famous massively depleted Motherlodes that I know of from even people that are pretty good players. Like you can see how they're just like, I mean, they're taking a lot of damage from this missile.
They just ate the entire rocket. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, so I worry that like these changes will be reasonable for high level groups, but like there still are gotchas in these bosses. Like these aren't bosses that like pugs were just like, rolling over. Like these still had ways, like this boss especially was kind of a pug killer. Like basically if you see that little plane in the top of the screen, it would fly around the room and then it would shoot. Like you'll see now like how Andy moves out of the way there. So you needed to actually see that plane fly over there to know to not be in that area. And it's not really telegraphed that well. Like you need to be constantly paying attention to those planes that are moving around the room, and those would one-shot you even in lower keys. Those were like a death swirly. So I'm a little worried that they're going to overcomplicate these bosses for lower keys, but I mean that's kind of been the theme of WoW in the last couple of seasons. So
there's a safe spot. There's a bunch of safe spots on this fight too.
I mean, I actually don't mind the mechanic of having to look to see where the planes are. I think that is a fine mechanic. I think the issue that I have with it is the boss was just immobile like 60% of the time, so you couldn't even move him to the safe spot, which sucked. It felt real bad when that happened. But like, you can see how slow that plane is moving to the corner. You know that the safe spot is going to be X here. So like, you're fine. But the boss wouldn't move half the time. So I think that was kind of my issue there. As a side note, by the way, one thing that we did mention is the third and the fourth boss did pure magic damage to your tank in these keys.
Yeah.
It did not have a melee, like a physical auto. It had a magic auto. which destroyed certain tanks.
I've never seen anybody get as much dopamine from a key in a very long time than Andy in this Motherlode.
But
dude, time in big Motherlodes that felt good.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think the changes, I think it's a good start. We'll have to see what the undata mineable stuff is later on. But I always liked Motherlode, so I'm not really complaining.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if there's count changes or whatever. You guys see this hot take from Roger Brown?
I've not really been on WoW Twitter lately. Let's see this.
There's a hot take at the launch of Midnight next expansion. When you zone into an instance, raid dungeon or PvP, all add-ons get disabled. In the outside world, add-ons still work normally. In the meantime, Blizzard should improve the base UI.
It's a tough one. I mean, personally, I think that the slippery slope of add-ons has now reached the point where it's too far, and I think add-ons are just too powerful and they ruin a lot of things about the game. I also think that it makes Blizzard, like, one of the biggest problems right now that people have is the bosses and the raids are getting so complicated and so difficult to pug that you can't just sort of go in with your natural sense of playing the game, and the add-on war is part of that. And so I actually am pretty, I don't want to say anti-add-on, because I mean, I'm loaded up with add-ons up the wazoo and I always will be, but the problem is just Blizzard make the UI better. It's just, I feel like it just won't happen. So I don't know. I wish there could just be a WoW 2 where there's only UI customization add-ons and then only cosmetic stuff and no boss mods or crazy weak auras, and then the game is designed well and the UI is clean, but it just seems like such a utopia at this point.
Game's also a little bit too fast to kind of revert back. I mean, I've been watching a bunch of HC stuff like that, and those people largely don't use add-ons, but they don't need it because of how slow the game is. And the issue with modern WoW is that it's just way too fast.
Yeah, but I think that part of the reason that it's fast is because of add-ons, right? Because add-ons make people help your gameplay and help your awareness so much, in order for them to make challenging encounters, they need to have this crazy fucking,
Yeah.
I think it's sort of, that's why I call it an arms race, because I think the add-ons are part of the reason that the game is so fast and crazy and unapproachable to people who don't want to download everything and set everything up.
I think it'd be interesting. I don't think the game is ready for that yet. There's a lot of accessibility things that I think Blizzard needs to do in the baseline UI before that could ever happen. I don't think Midnight will be anytime. It will be ready for Midnight. Down the road, yeah, I'd be fully in support of that. But as of right now, no. At the very minimum, I think they need a better buff tracking system.
I mean, they need better nameplates too.
And better nameplates for sure.
Their
nameplates probably.
Their nameplates are horrendous. I mean, party frames too. I don't
know. Just as a reminder, by the way, by the time you're watching this, there will be 1 week left before the Brutosaur and the anniversary event end.
Okay.
So if you want to get your golden longboy, now would be the time.
I still haven't bought my Brutosaur. I'm still just sitting here on my old ratty BFA Brutosaur, and I don't know if I want to spend $90 for a freaking mailbox.
I wouldn't buy it if I already had the old one.
But yeah, that is just a quick reminder because things are ending soon.
Place your prediction now. Will I have caved and bought the stupid Brutosaur by next episode?
I'm gonna wager no, because I'm gonna bet that you don't log on to retail and you stay on HC.
You don't need to log on to retail to buy it.
Well,
you're right from the shop.
All right, Q&A. First question from Maxwell. He says, with the survey about death timers, would it be a solution if the death limit was for keys sub 7 and deaths don't add to the timer, but you have a 15 to 20 death limit, and at 7 with the Peril affix, the limit is removed and deaths add to the timer? Actually, I think this could be a decent change to how the Peril affix works. Maybe this could be a pretty decent on-ramp into Mythic Plus as well. And it kind of does what you were talking about with M0s, right?
I think that people overestimate a little bit how much the deaths affect the timers. like, wiping and having to run back or losing your cooldowns or having to reset the boss is really, really bad.
Yeah.
I don't think the death timer really changes that much. I mean, obviously it's like it sort of feels like you're getting beaten while you're down, which is why people don't like it. If I had to make one suggestion for the on-ramp thing, it would be that like maybe add keys up to +7 difficulty that were untimered, if that makes sense. And just allow people to do untimer, like no death limit either. Just no death limit, no timer. Just if you want to do a +7, like maybe the rewards are slightly less or whatever, but just allow people to do the challenging keys without the timer.
And the Peril Affix is the timer.
Yeah.
No, just like nothing. Just no failure condition.
No. Like at 7, you get the Peril Affix, and that is the timer.
Oh,
as the timer and the affix.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. I don't really mind having timers and lower keys though if people want that. I just meant as like an alternative, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. I think for me, I don't think this solves the issue really.
I
don't think it changes much, unfortunately.
I actually don't think this would be. I don't think this would be bad. I don't love death limits just in general. I think the death limit, kind of like we talked about a few weeks back, I don't think death limit's like the right solve. But I do think this is like a pretty good. This could create a pretty decent learning environment for the dungeons, and it gives you something. I mean, we talked about it earlier. M0 is just too easy, but it should be the place where people are learning, and like this maybe would fix that.
I would personally, I think we should just get better checkpoints.
Based. I think we should also get better checkpoints.
Better checkpoints. Boss dies, checkpoint.
Amen.
Nothing is worse than fucking running back in Grimbatol, man. I swear to God.
Yep.
That
or if you wipe to a boss, like you all respawn right next to that boss.
The only thing that's worse than running back in Grimbatol is running back in City of Threads.
I don't even remember the last time I did that dungeon. I couldn't even tell you what the run back is in there.
It's a fly. But if you don't have the fly unlocked, then you have to like run past, like you have to run back from the very beginning of the dungeon.
Stone Vault's pretty bad too, like incredibly bad. Because there is no checkpoint in Stone Vault?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Question for Squishy. Ghost asks, my 4-hour-a-week raiding guild just got to Silken Court, and we've watched the videos and I made a raid plan. We've also talked through the fight and all that. Any tips or random things that we should look out for? Also, as the raid leader, I've even decided 21st man, so when someone misses, at least I know the I know the fight and will be familiar with the fight, assuming that I have to like sub in.
Yeah. I want to start with Graal. You wanna start with this one?
Oh yeah, I love this boss. So basically, this is a big dance boss. There's a lot of movement. And the big thing is you have at all times there's places that you need to stand or places that you need to go, and then there's people that you need to look out for. And I think the most important thing is that you're looking over so if you look at the raid logs and you go to like I don't know what it's called, but like the little chart where you can see like the replay, I think it's called, where you can see where everybody's moving. And you just start watching out and seeing where people are moving and what they're doing, and kind of like identify when someone doesn't understand, and then address that of like, okay, this is what you're supposed to go, and this is who you need to look out for. Because I feel like a lot of times people just don't understand what the danger is. They're sort of just like trying to follow the pack.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I'd say the biggest thing is people doing the same thing every time. I think that is 100%. The thing that you want to get in everybody's heads. I personally think that streaming the progression point and like going through here's what's happening, here's why it's happening, particularly useful for people. But on the same hand, also not trying to information overload at the start. Because if you try to get everybody to memorize the fight perfectly, it's just not going to happen. So take it piece by piece, not even one phase at a time. I think each phase can be realistically broken up into like 3 different segments. 3 reigns in phase 1, intermission, 3 web vortexes in phase 2, intermission, and then kind of 2 main points in the last phase. So I think just doing small chunks, I think is kind of the best suggestion that I have.
Yeah, the information overload, I think, I don't know if other people just learn a lot differently than me, but I feel like so often raid leaders are like talking too far ahead in the fight. Like, in my opinion, unless I see it and I'm like, okay, I'm talking about hard bosses, obviously, not easy bosses. Unless I'm there and I feel like how I got to that location and what I'm casting and what I'm worried about, until I know all that stuff, I'm not going to be able to make changes. And I feel like I'll be starting a fight and a raid leader will be like, okay, in phase 2, on the third one, you got to bait the opposite way. And it's like, it just goes over my head and it just wipes the raid anyway. And I feel like you really have to do those bite-sized pieces of like, okay, as soon as you get to a spot that's progress and then you notice everyone's running around with their chickens with their heads cut off, then you need to be like, okay, everyone, I'm going to boot up the Discord stream. So now now that we saw that, this is what we need to do, as opposed to like trying to shovel all the stuff in their head before you get there. Because I feel like a lot of raid leaders have this copium where like, if I just plan super good and I get them all the information they're going to know, and when we finally see that moment, everyone's going to nail it, but it just never happens.
Yeah.
Like, even Liquid, right? Like, they're doing hundreds and hundreds of pulls of the same bosses that we do, and it's like, you just have to let your raiders get to a part, fail it, and then see what happened, and then be like, okay, this is what you have to do. And maybe other people learn differently than me, but like, I feel like raid leaders waste so much time talking about a part of the fight that we haven't even been to, because they have some sort of like cope that we're just going to somehow nail it on the first try. But like, if you're not going to do it on the first try, then what's the point of even yapping for 3 minutes about a phase that you know is going to go wrong instantly anyway?
It's really interesting you say that as well, because like Erudite just killed Silken Court like a week ago. That's my 1 day 4-hour guild. We killed it on pull 99, and this guild is really interesting because it requires absolutely zero prep. Like, you are not required to look up the fight beforehand, and I had to deal with that. And it was, I say deal in a very loose terms, but it was really interesting because the way we taught, like I taught Silken Court, was exactly how I just said it. You start with the first 15 minutes or 15 seconds of the fight. And that is what we focused on for the first, 5 to 10 pulls. I already had the raid plan showed up. I didn't show it to anybody beforehand. I took a screenshot of the raid plan. I didn't even link the raid plan, and just posted in Discord and said, here's where you're standing. And here's where you're going. We did that for a number of polls, and then we went to the second part. You bring up another stream, you stream for another 10 seconds, here's the next part, here's how it works. You just do that over and over again. And so, like, obviously prep is really good, but a lot of people learn by just doing the fight.
Yeah.
They have to see it once, and then they go.
Dude, I'm so bad about, I put in effort.
Mr. Ashara.
Dude, I put in effort, like, looking at the fight beforehand, but sometimes he's like, unless you see it, it's, like, impossible to, like, really understand the cadence of how things are going to feel.
Yep.
All right, last question we got for Q&A this week. Dylan asks, he says, hello, I have less of a question, more so a talking point. What is Blizzard's design philosophy of the mastery stat? I'm a Shadow Priest and have very strong mastery that demands you play around it and have some mastery of the spec in order to do good damage. Compare that to a BM Hunter, Rep Paladin, or Sub Rogue, whose masters are just increased damage by X%. And I'm not talking about the power of the mastery effect, just something that encourages good play. Think about Boomkin or Disc Priest. Their mastery isn't particularly fun or interesting, but at least to a new player, it encourages good play in order to keep your dots up or heal targets with atonement, respectively. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I'm not in love with stats just in general. Like, I think
the WoW stats are terrible.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you kind of, like, in this question, you kind of nail it. It's like, well, what is mastery's point? But even more, just, like, start thinking about the other stats. Like, what the fuck is the point of crit? Like, when was the last time I felt good when I, like, crit an individual spell?
Yeah. I mean, crit feels good in other games, right? Because you have, like, other things like crit damage to amp it, or you're attacking slow enough that a crit is like big, noticeable, flashy, big, chunks of health bar off a mob. But like, yeah, I mean, they're all just different things. You can really only feel haste a lot of the time.
I mean, dude, the only time I feel versatility is when I start calcing whether or not I'm going to live something in a fucking 27 level key, and I'm like, well, actually, if I had 1450 versatility, I'd be able to live this, but I'm at 1392. I'm not actually able to live it. It's like,
get your mistletoe buff.
Well, actually, if I had 5,000 more versatility, I'd be able to do 7 key levels higher.
Um, I think we're all in agreement that the stats there are like boring. I've been one for a while to say like they should just roll the tertiaries into the actual stats. Haste can also increase movement speed.
Oh,
Like crit can also increase
leech.
I don't know. Sure. Oh, no, verse can increase leech.
Wouldn't verse
and
be
then-
avoidance?
I don't know, man. Sure, whatever. Like, just add like an additional effect, so it's actually kind of interesting. So there is a main plus a utility, and I think that could be really interesting. But yeah, I think the design of the mastery stat is whatever was made when mastery was in when was mastery made? What
No.
mastery stat?
Mop?
I'm looking this up.
There's been mastery as long as I've been playing. So since WoD, but maybe.
I don't even know.
I think the problem with stats is they've basically removed stat like thresholds.
Ada.
Oh, Kata, yeah, okay. So they've removed like breakpoints for stats. And I actually think that haste and mastery and expertise and hit breakpoints and stuff like that, whenever they existed, they were actually kind of interesting because you had to think about it. Now it was really obnoxious for like new players, right? Because you have to do some research into your spec or your class to actually know that you needed like such a hit rating, or you needed this expertise rating, or there's this haste breakpoint in which you can get your third void torn and your surrender to madness. And if you're under that haste breakpoint, then you're thousands of DPS less than other specs. And I do understand why Blizzard went away from that, because it's too complicated for newer players. But I think that's what made stats cool. And whenever Blizzard went away from that, it inherently made stats like way less cool. Because there's also crit breakpoints too. Because I remember Legion H Pally had like, if you had 52% crit, you were able to crit every single holy shock or something like that, and it just increased your healing by a ton.
Yeah, I think the thing is, so this question though, keep in mind you're only isolating one thing. So like I 100% agree with like, okay, some specs have very, very cool or interesting mastery, like Resto Druid, for example. Others don't. But at the same time, like every spec has so many moving parts and there's so many specs that you can't really expect everything to be a hit on every spec, Like for example, how good is the tier set? Like some classes have interesting tier sets, some classes tier sets do nothing. Like some of their capstones are different, some of their interactions with, they might have a legendary item that tier, or they might have trinkets that are very interesting, and other classes just use stat sticks. So, while it's true that mastery doesn't seem like it's serves a purpose for a lot of specs, it still does serve some purpose for some specs. But if I had to make one complaint about the stat system, this would like rattle the foundations of WoW, but I think it's actually like a very core like RPG element. Is I don't like the idea that stamina is uniform across all items, and I like the idea of being able to build your character versus damage and survivability how you want it. And I think that's why everyone becomes such like a meta slave slash like following sims only. Like imagine if your sim just spat out with, okay, it just told you to run 0 stamina on all your gear. Like, well, okay, great. Like that doesn't help me, and it actually like allows you to sort of create a play style and like fit around the content that you're in and the way that you like to play. And I think that like the fact that every single item has the same defensive value relative to eye level, and it doesn't allow players to sort of be tanky or be glass cannons or kind of like be jack of all trades. I think the itemization in WoW just becomes like omega like simple and boring.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like talking about unique stats like hit, for example, or weapon skill in classic, the main purpose that those serve is it sort of encourages you to use like different gear. Like for example, let's say you need to get 8% hit, and there's this helm that's super rare that it gives 3% hit, and it's like if you get this helm you can gear a certain way because you get a big chunk of your hit, but it's hard to get. And if you don't have the helm, then you have to try different pieces, and it's like it sort of like shifts the idea of like this BIS or like sim mindset into just like kind of looking at the items that you have and making decisions, which I think is more fun and more MMO-y. But in the way that people play WoW, like they just kind of like want everything simple and just want the item to have a big number on there that tells you how good or bad it is, and not really have to like think about piecing things together. So yeah, I don't know. Unfortunately, I just think the current player base of WoW doesn't want that depth of decision making when it comes to their gear.
The last 2 times I've actually thought about it beyond just looking at sims. Corruption was the first one. Thinking about corruption breakpoints, how much I could really manage with just like how much corruption was reasonable for me to play versus how much damage I was going to be getting out of it. Because the downside is the corruption effect would it'd stack up, and so they're pretty scary. The other time was with Legion legendaries. The Mimkin helmet had an insane haste breakpoint where if you hit 30% haste, you were able to like keep up a buff with 100% uptime, but if you were below that, it would like fuck you. And so you had to make sure that you hit that haste breakpoint, and that was the last time I've thought about stats since.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much people actually want more interesting stats in the first place, though. Like, I know a lot of people who prefer the simplicity of Diablo's itemization versus PoE's itemization of they want to be able to see number go up, I equip it, rather than PoE's, convoluted, I need to hit these breakpoints, these these reses and stuff like that. I think WoW might be a similar way of they just want to know this is an upgrade, they want to equip it.
Breakpoints are jank because new players you can get an item that's an eye level upgrade, but it can be a downgrade. And more conventional, this is the reason that Blizzard went away from this, is more conventional wisdom should say if the item is an eye level upgrade, it should be an upgrade. But like if you were like losing a haste breakpoint or a mastery breakpoint or something like that.
Well, right. It just has to do with how everything connects. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
The fact if there are breakpoints, what it has you do is it has you think about how you're piecing together all your gear. One ring isn't necessarily better than another ring because it depends on, do you need that haste? Do you need this hit? Whatever. But people just like, if you look at the way people play, like if there was an add-on that if you could just mouse over everything and it would tell you exactly how good or bad it is. I know there's like, they try and do that, but they don't work that well, but everyone would use it. Everyone would just use it. If the item's green, equip, and they would never think anything or look up a guide or do anything ever. That would be everyone's perfect idea of what to do. And it's like, that's just how people that play WoW just want to stick it in the hole sometimes, Yo,
Squishy, what'd your pawn say about this item?
Ultra Bis.
You remember that shit?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I thought about that so long.
It has. But yeah, stats are not as meaningful as I think a lot of people want to. Definitely missing the RPG aspect a little, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
Do you remember the Stark Cloak though? How many people got baited by the Stark Cloak because it said it was Bis and it had no stam, then people just died because it didn't have stam?
I never wore it. I thought the thing was bad.
I remember.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Dorky was pugging like a high Oldemon that season, and he was like, they were getting blown up, and then he inspects the evoker, and they had an AUG evoker that had the Sark cloak on. It's just like, he's like, bro, it's on the BIS list.
You're stealing stats from the rest of your group as an AUG evoker.
That
is elite.
It's so base.
That is elite.
And not having stam for a high push key. Yeah.
All right. I think that's it. Anything else? Any final shout outs? Anything else that we want to say?
Happy New Year.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year.
Shout out the New Year. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Peace.